What's going on, guys? This is Kaisha. Welcome back. So we are back with another video. So in this video, we cover OCG Metagame tier list prediction for the upcoming Deck Build Justice Hunters April 2025 Live and Regulation. And this tier list was provided by Hagetaka, a very known personality, content creator, and player in Japan. So in this picture, he will share his insights or thoughts on his predictions on how the metagame will shape after the April ban list and also the Justice Hunters set that was recently introduced to us last Saturday. And this will be a very comprehensive overview of how the metagame will shape. And we are going to discuss each deck here in this tier list. And I myself will also provide my insight or thought process on justifying these decks and also providing insights on how they will accord into this upcoming format. And we do have S, A, B, C, and D. And E tiers here, surprisingly, he made an E tier, but he usually does this tier list only at D. But for now, we do have E because we have a bunch and a huge chunk of decks that we are going to cover in this early April format. So moving on first, we do have Runic on E tier. I think Runic is a deck that will solely rely on their stunning potential with border and the decking out tendencies of the deck, making the opponent's lives pretty much a miserable experience. And with border and decking out prowess of Runic, I think it is a very strong deck going first. And I think it is a deck that used to be relying on floodgates with deck lockdown, synchro zone, forcing stone, skill drain, summon limit. There can be only one and goes in much from before, but now they have made an innovation for Runic, playing Dominus cards, Impulse, Purge, and it will make the going second experience of Runic better. But all in all, I think control decks are in a tight spot right now, with Yami being live and Malice still fairly decent, and Dragon Tail, Eyes Primite are very much faster decks than Runic and other control decks. I think it will be a tough challenge for those control decks to top this metagame. And I do feel like that the format will be very centric on providing tools and tech options against the Yami and Dragon Tail. So all in all, I think Runic can capitalize on those intricacies, and they can form a deck list that can answer the top 3, top 4, top 5 best decks available, and we'll have a good time on this metagame. Moving on next, we have Labyrinth. So Labyrinth, as we all know, has been here for like 3 years already. Yeah, since 2023, I believe, or 2022. It used to be a deck that is relying on huge trap lineup, and they have evolved into a mid-range type of control deck where it incorporates the furniture cards or the Kea Labyrinth or more on traps like Nibiru, for example, Maxi, Ash, no? And now they are reverting back into a trap-oriented build with trap trick and dominus cards and also high impact going first cards like Dogmatica Punishment and Druma Cannon, and also other stuff like Ice Dragon Prison. So I think Labyrinth, as much as it is very strong going first, I think it doesn't have the components to go second comfortably, even the inclusion of the Dominus cards. So I think it will struggle really, really bad on this metagame where it doesn't have any components to break the boards of your opponent or also interact with the hand effects of Dragon Tail, for example, no, or the explosiveness of Yami. So I think it lacks the tools to go second. But on the flip side, it is very strong going first with a way to turbo out the dimensional barrier or Simul Archfiends. It can certainly stop the Dragon Tail, Malice, Yami from ever playing the game. So I think it will be very dependent on how the Labyrinth can adapt in this environment. Next would be Grass Branded. I think Grass into One is a massive, really massive hit towards the Grass Branded, and it's not the 50 card, 40 card branded that is topping, it's the 60 card variant, and it's been a topic or a hot water topic in X or other social media platforms where people are fuming that Grass is a really toxic card for branded and other 60 card pile decks now, like Malice and Orcus, and inevitably it happened. The Grass was hit from the ban list, and it is only now what R1. So I think they have gotten their wish But all in all, I think Branded still has some tools that can fetch off the grass with the Trust. Being able to search off the grass going second, I think you can capitalize on those barrage of effects on the graveyard. Once grass resolves, you have Tirlamen Shadal, Bestial cards on your setup with the Albaz cards, no, and Sinful Spoils, Azamina. So you do have a lot of tools to navigate going second, but the only question would be, is the resiliency of Branded enough to handle these much more high tempo decks above, no? So I think is really up in the air. I think is not really concrete at this point. It will definitely dwell down on the brand players or experienced branded players on how they can shape a 60 card variant, or they would resort back into 40 consistent with more hand traps variants of branded. Moving on next on the D, we have Purely. So another deck that is resurging back again in the metagame. It used to be a tier 1 deck back in the day 2023, I believe. I think it used to be the best deck, but now they have been compelled into the D tier because of the recent inclusion of Sleepy Memory. It is now at R2, improving their draw power and also chances of drawing into hand traps and board breakers going second. And I think it is a massive boost for Purely. And in addition to that, I think people will still not be going to prepare against Purely, so the Nor will be just free. I think the Gamma Seals, the Santa Claus, the Lava Golems are not going to be very much imparted towards the Purely preparation. So I think Nor can have an easy field day in this metagame. So Purely as a whole is a deck that can capitalize on plethora of traps and tech cards like Black Bolt Gloves that will boost the going first and talent. And I think the Dark Ruler No More inclusion of the Purely and even Droplet can be very pivotal on answering the best decks. I think the tech choices and main deck options of Purely does align on countering the best decks right now. So I think it is a very good deck to pick up. And Purely as a deck is very consistent and very much linear into doing that kind of North Tower play, you know. Next, we do have Evil Queen, and I certainly think that this is very low for their standards. I really hope that this deck was higher on this series because it used to be a deck that is winning almost every big events recently in Southeast Asia. And all in all, I think Evil Queen is very consistent, a very capable mid-range deck, and being able to play multiple engines like Finsmith and things like Millennium, Sprite, for example, no, I think they have a lot of ways to utilize the deck into a bigger, much more threatening going first. And with the main deck spots and flex spots of Light Queen, I think it will also help the deck going second. But all in all, I think this is a very capable deck, and I'm not really sure why it is very low on this tier list. But yeah, I firmly believe that this deck should be better. And next would be Orcus. I think Orcus is a very rigid inclusion here. It used to be the best deck last January, early January, no, or late December, after the quarter century Trinity box where it introduced the support of Orcus. It used to be an S tier, no? But the metagame have shape and form towards answering Malice where Lancia is played 100% on everyone's side deck. So in return, it hurt the Orcus. So I think Orcus struggled quite terribly on the previous formats or months. So yeah, I think it takes a really good pilot to play Orcus right now, and you have all the tools to make this deck function, as we have seen on the previous Battle Nexus and City Duel Indonesia tournaments and China mainland tournaments. It won various events, and if you know Orcus and you're playing Orcus by a long period of time already, I think you would know what I'm saying. It takes a really decent and not even decent, really good pilot to make Orcus work. This is a deck that will not stomp everyone on this metagame. It is not a deck that can overpower everything on its side. It needs a very technical, very sophisticated pilot to make it happen. And I think that's the silver lining for Orcus. If you are very good at the game, I think you can take Orcus into really high levels in this format. And next would be Ignister. I think I would just be certain that Ignister will be just here for the remainder of the April. or May, for example, no, I think it is a very good deck and really capable on going first, able to dish out really strong boards and can be very consistent as well with silent mining and I meet you stuff, all of those cybers. And I think it is in a very decent spot on D. I'm not really expecting it to be higher, to be honest, because I don't think they can survive the 8 Maxi, no? 3 Purulya, 3 Falls, and the OG Maxi. Those stuff are really terrifying against the deck, and it will help the success of Ignister being able to run out of choices or plays when struck with those draw power engines, rather cards, no? So I think, yeah, it really suffers on those regard, and if you want to run this deck, you should face it as brave as you can because you cannot do anything about that. You cannot play this deck conservatively. This deck should be comboing off and making a really solid board. And next would be Gem Knights. Yeah, I think this is Gem Knights. So Gem Knights on B, rather C tier. I think it's fair, but the previous 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of the metagame have been telling me that Gem Knights is not up the par of the other decks out here. So I'm not really certain about the C inclusion here. I think Orcus could be better on some weeks, but all in all, Gem Knights is a very spacious deck and can also operate multiple engines, Snuffing Smith as a Mina, for example. So I think it has that experimental phase where people can play the deck into many options or making the deck kind of passive, playing more hand traps and playing more board breakers like Droplet, for example, Dark Cooler no more. And I think it is an asset for the deck where you can explore the deck and still be not addressed by most people in the metagame. Moving on next, we do have Ryzil on C tier. So this deck severely suffered from the ban list with Sword going into 1, Tachyon going into 1 as well. I think this is a fair judgment on Ryzil. I would also rate Ryzil on C if I'm going to make this tier list because it lost massive consistency numbers on the deck. And I think Ryzil as a deck is very consistent. And with them being lowered into C tier, I think it will help the Ryzil. It is funny, no, that it nerfed the Ryzil, but it also helped on my own perception, where it can operate on the middle of the pack and will not get addressed by most people. The bombs or the books will not be played for the Ryzil or the other tech options like Encore. No? So I think it will capitalize on their setbacks from the ban list. And it's very exciting whether we can see Ryzil rise back again because I can definitely say that I doubted the deck when they have lost 2x and the bonfires before. But yeah, I think it's still fairly strong. Moving on next without K9, I think I also telegraph the inclusion of K9 being on C or B only because it is not on the same brief as Dragon Tail and Yami. The deck has so much potential. The intricacies of the deck is very alluring or very tempting, no, with their uh, after effects or aftermath effects from hand trap interactions or effect monsters interactions, I think is very tempting to utilize the K9. And it's also fairly versatile, no? Going second, going first. I think it has a lot of plays. It can go into the Reaper. It can go into going second, XYZ, toolbox type of deck. So, yeah, you have a lot of things going on for K9. But it doesn't have that distinct, that consistent factor where it can capitalize on a linear type of play and abuse it into the metagame. I think it doesn't have that mechanic as much as the Yami or the Dragon Tail, no? I think it really solely depends on how the metagame will shape or how the side decking options and trends of staples will evolve in the upcoming April format for the K9. I think it really depends on that. It really dictates the success of K9 on that regard. Next would be Atlantean. I think a very decent deck as well, and I'm really surprised that the Waterbury City of Torrent is not addressed. I really do think that that is a very cancerous card, and it functions like a Fluandris where the Storm Winds is just a pain in the buff, no? So it's really hard to play against Mermail when they go first and set up a board with Waterlock, and it's pretty much FTK, no? I think there's no play around on that on normal circumstances. So yeah, I think very explosive, very confident on going first. I think it should be fine on C, and it can go even higher than Tenpai or Christon, depending on the player base of Atlantean. Next would be Christron. I think this is the far most safest deck to play in this metagame, where if you just want to run a hand trap deck, mid-range type of deck, competent going second, competent going first, able to dish out negates, interruptions, and recoveries, I think Christron is the best deck for you. And it will kind of dodge the valleys, no? It doesn't really fancy being on A or S on weeks. So I think B is very logical for Christian and competent as well in terms of being just there, no? Being able to trade blow for blow against the top decks available. And next would be Tenpai Dragon. By far, when I mean by far, it is the most represented deck in Southeast Asian regions, especially in Philippines. If you are Filipino, you would know what I am saying. Tenpai Dragon is the most represented deck because of the innate nature of the deck to go second. I mean, people doesn't expect you to go second in this 2025 Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And Tenpai does that 99% of the time. They capitalize on the wits of going second, being able to catch your opponents off guard with their board breakers, hand traps, and silly stuff that can hurt the opponent's meta decks, no? So all in all, I think Tenpai Dragon should be fine on B. And if not respected, if people will not really play those strikes, those judgment on their side, I think Tenpai Dragon could go even higher. And yeah, I think the deck has still rooms for innovation where people can play less Charmies, more board breakers, or more Charmies, more Meowls on the main, and less board breakers, or make the deck balance 50-50 of breakers and hand traps. So I think it still has some room for innovations in this upcoming April. Next would be Memento Atlan. I think Konami completely forgotten about this deck. They don't really care about Memento Atlan. I think this deck will just be here for another year or two, no? And it's really fantastic, no? Yeah, it's really fantastic considering that Memento has been out here being a B tier deck, untouched, unskated by the ban list from the past 4, 5 ban lists already, 6. Yeah, it's really insane. I'm not really sure what is in the mind of Konami. As for me, I think this deck is very strong, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't really win often against Memento Plan. I think this deck is very tricky to deal against, and if Memento Plan draws good cards, I think it's pretty much unstoppable. It is a deck that went toe-to-toe with Snake Eyes full power. Imagine that. I think that alone says a lot about this deck. And it can be really pivotal for many people to play Memento Land because it capitalizes on the idea or illusion where people are not really prepared against you or doesn't respect you enough, no? Next would be Regenesis. I think if you just wanna play a deck that is good, that is certainly going to be competent, you should play Regenesis. The deck is really linear. It is the modern anti-meta. It relies on stunning the opponent with floodgates, and it is a far more consistent version of Metabit, no? It has an engine. You can play Dogmatica, you can play Bestials, you can play White Forest, and Azamina. And you have Nadir, for example, no, two dump cards and breakboards with the Malong, with the uh, NPs, no? So I think it's really flexible. Can go second, can go first. And yeah, I think it just speaks modern anti-meta. I think this is how modern anti-meta should look like. And very safe deck as well. I mean, you have a lot of rooms for error on this deck because the deck has inherent summons and all in all, reveal fathers and pretty much linear, no? Very basic gameplay. And next would be White Forest. I think I'm really surprised that this is not addressed by the ban list, but it just means one thing. It will get more new support. The storyline is not yet done, and the potential for this deck is really terrifyingly scary, considering that it's been here for 6, 9 months already, and still doing great work, sitting below, beneath B tier or A tier, no, sometimes even S tier. So yeah, I think this deck does have a lot of assets to capitalize on with their supports from 4 sets already, no? They have gotten infinite resources of supports, and it will get more new support inevitably. So yeah, it will just make the deck better, and I'm very excited whether it can compete on the same level as Malice or Yami moving forward, or even better, no? Moving on towards the A tier, we do have Blue Eyes Primite. So Blue Eyes Primite, a deck that is unscathed by the ban list. I mean, it's just so obvious at this point now that Konami pushes Blue Eyes as the best deck on the upcoming Worlds this coming August or September, I believe. So yeah, I think Blue Eyes Primite will just be the best 8-tier deck for quite some time already. It will not be S, I think. It is just a better voices voice in my own opinion, but really dangerous one with the drill beam and the beryl, no? So I think this deck will be a safe pick for most people where you don't want to play the best decks available, but you want to play a really good deck in this metagame. I think you should go with Blue Eyes and potentially more supports. No, I think Blue Eyes as an archetype is favored by Konami. As we all know, this is Kaiba's pet deck. So this is a legacy type of archetype, and at certain point, it will get more new support no matter what happens. I mean, it won the Worlds already on 2015 rather, no? And it might win the Worlds once again in 2025, 10 years later. Next would be Dragon Tail, a new deck from Justice Hunters. And this is going to be very good because it has turn 0 plays. When I mean, when I say turn 0, it can play on the opponent's turn when even if they go first. And also, the deck functions similar like a baby tier limits where you have fusion mechanics on your hand and field, and also you have floating effects on the graveyard where your monsters just instantly jumps out of the graveyard and interrupts the opponent. You have bounce, you have spell negate, you have destroy. So I think this is a very balanced deck. It is not overly tuned, it is not really broken, and it is a very good game design for me. I think this is how a meta deck should look like in this upcoming format. And all in all, I think it will just get better. This is a waifu archetype. As we all know, waifu archetypes will just get more new support after support. And yeah, the potential is really limitless for Dragon Tail. I mean, it could be the next tier elements. We never know, no? But I think it's really far from that. But all in all, I think the deck is really decent and a solid 8 tier at most. It could be probably be even better than Malice on my own perception. Can be better than Malice, especially if people will make a Dragon Tail deck list that is very flexible. I mean, it has 20 rooms for non-engines on the deck. You have like 19 for the Dragon Tail with the spells and fusions, rather main monsters, and 1 prosperity, and 20 is all flex pot for the Dragon Tail. So I think that's a very good sign for Dragon Tail. And moving on next towards the S tier, we do have Malice. I think Dragon Tail should be here above Malice, but Malice is still very decent, and they would just replace the 2 Dormouse with Sign Up Mining or Allure or other cyber cards like I Meet You, or for example, the recent trend for Malice, making cybers much more flexible on the Malice, capitalizing on Ignister cards and also link climbing much more faster, much more seamless. And I think the pace of Malice is still up there, still relatively high, but it lost Dormouse in 2 copies. No, I think it's massive as well. And we cannot take it for granted. I mean, it happened similar to the Rizal where it lost 2x. But I think Mali still has the Chessy Cat, not Cheesy Cat, I think. Chessy Cat rather. And also the Ignister cards, the backup. And also consistency cards like Signet and the Allure. So I think it is still very strong and probably one of the most notorious, obnoxious turn 1 boards that they can set up. And Lancea is still a very problematic card for Malice. And I don't expect people dropping Lancea because Malice is still a threat, no? Next would be, finally, our last deck. I have lost my breath. We do have Yami, the final deck on the Justice Hunter set, and Yami is going to be the S tier de facto deck in this metagame. And all in all, it is very worthy of that status. It dominated the Japan scene and also South Korean and Taiwan scene on the early 2 days from the release of Yami. And it is a very promising sign for Yami. It looked to be a new sprite now, for example. And yeah, I think being able to run so many consistency cards like the School of Obedience, and we do have the Engage package from Sky Strikers, and it can even play Sacred Beast and Sangan and Rescue Cat. It does have a lot of tools to make the Yami very consistent. Like you have like 86 to 90% of opening starters and comboing off with one card, and also the interactions with uh, the Yami can be very tricky to deal against because they have graveyard effects, and also their field spell is also very utilized, and the hand trap lineup of Yam is also not a thing to scoff off. They have rooms for Flawless and Imperm, and probably even Droll on the main deck, being able to run 15 hand traps at most, or 18. For example, no, bar playing not talent, bar not playing talents or stuff like Trust, no, or Dark Ruler no more on the main deck. So yeah, I think Yami and Malice are the two most explosive decks out here, and Dragon Tail is just going to be the best conservative deck, no, similar towards the Voices Voice from before. And yeah, very conservative deck, being able to play around Flawless Purulya Maxi, summoning off, capping off on 2 times on a single turn, no? So I think it's just going to be the middle of the pack on the best decks available. But all in all, Yami just have that extra raw power X factor on making it the best deck in this metagame. So yeah, that sums up our OCG metagame tier list prediction by Hagetaka. So thank you once again for Hagetaka for providing this valuable metagame tier list. And if you found this video informative or helpful, please consider subscribing. It definitely motivates me a lot to keep providing this content for you guys. So once again, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.